Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
No.
Yeah.
Don't leave me alone with them.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we have
And
an
genders.
absolute and genders. Thanks for that, Dwight. You the guy. When we get this out there and everyone's it went downhill rapidly, I'll be like 15 seconds in and Dwight was straight in there. I'm not normally this guy. I wait for a little bit longer. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, children and boys, we don't care what you identify as long as you're listening to us. And remember, hit subscribe and do that bell thing that you'll see at the bottom. I say it all the time, and I don't know if you guys are going to do it or not, but please. Now, guys, I have been after this guy for ages on my home turf. To give you a bit of an idea, I've played about 8 times at his home stadium now, being interviewed by Dwight. But I've never been able to get him to come on the Woma TV show. And it kills me because I can't even give this guy an introduction. All I can say is, out of all of the people I've met through martial arts, he's right up there in my top 10 immediately, just as not just a really good martial artist, but just as a really cool guy. And we will go into it later when we're talking about how I first met him in 2012, when he walked into a room and nearly lost the room by having to explain to Rick Fay, remember, you're Rick Fay. Why aren't you acting like Rick Fay? So anyway, we'll talk about that one later. It was great. Everyone's like, who is this guy? And I was like, I like this guy. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Dwight Woods, the JKD Rebel. Dwight, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's been a long time. Yeah, we've been trying to put this together, huh?
Yeah, we have indeed. And guys, like in the spirit of cross-pollination and the fact that this whole hive mind thing works on the internet, if you haven't yet, go over to the JKD Rebel, check him out on Facebook, all the social medias. We're doing this. Normally you do this at the end, but I'll get you to do the plug as well. But Dwight, twice a week, puts shows out. And let's put it this way. He's more contentious in the Jeet Kune Do world than I am. And trust me, I am the enfant terrible there. So, Dwight, we might as well get started right at the beginning.
Okay.
How's a kid from the West Indies get into Bruce Lee and then meander your way over and get involved and be at the highest level that you are at right now in the JKD world? How'd you start?
Oh, it's all because of England.
Oh, I hope you're not going to blame imperialism again, are you, my friend?
Yeah, it's all because of England. Because I was born when I was born, I was born a British subject, and where I lived, we enjoyed one of the Crown Colony's top exports, which was kung fu films.
Ooh.
And so that's how it started. If it had not been for Hong Kong, right? If it had not been for British imperialism, right, then I would never have had the opportunity to watch 6 different kung fu films every couple of weeks.
Well, you know, you've hit on something here because, you know, right now, imperialism is the bad guy, but we built a lot of bridges. We built a lot of trade. We did do some good stuff as well. It wasn't just all bad. We did do some good stuff. So that's that. No, now this has got me right because the Hong Kong film now is rather niche and, dare I say it, generational. Because what people don't understand is everyone thinks that kung fu movies started with Bruce Lee, but Golden Harvest and Raymond Chow, and then you know, you see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and you go, "Wow, this is amazing." You go, they were doing wire work way back when. Yeah. So what were the movies that like whet your appetite?
So if my memory serves correctly, the one-armed swordsman, the one-armed Chinese swordsman.
Yes.
That could have been the very first one. Could have been, right? And then, you know, there's Five Fingers of Death, Bloody Fists, those guys. And then in 71, was it The Big Boss?
Yeah.
And that changed everything because I was quite used to a particular fighting style depiction on the screen. And that was not Bruce Lee's fighting style at all. So I started paying attention. And, you know, and I mean, I didn't lose my love for Kung Fu films. I still watched the Shaw Brothers stuff. So I was still a fan of Chen Quan Tai and Chi Kwan Chun and Alexander Fusheng and those guys. But by the time Jackie Chan came along in like 82 with the Kung Fu comedy and what have you, I watched what in the States is called Snake in the Eagle's Shadow.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. And then I stopped. I couldn't take Jackie Chan and the Kung Fu comedy. So I never watched him again until decades later with Police Story or what have you. He was doing a disservice to the art of Kung Fu.
You've hit something on the head because I've had this with a load of guys. Like Bruce, I was a sort of Bruce Lee fan, right? But you got to remember, there's a little bit of a generational, not much between us, but enough where when people say, "Oh, Bruce Lee was an inspiration," I was like, actually, Pat Morita was an inspiration for me. You know, Mr. Miyagi. You know, come on, the greatest wingman of all time, right? Not the coolest looking character going. Used to flip burgers for like Henry Winkler back in the day. I remember in Happy Days, right? And but he managed to get Ralph Macchio, Elizabeth Shue. You know what I mean? And for a 16-year-old kid, I was like, Karate Kid had everything for me. But I was a sort of a Bruce Lee fan to a degree.
Yeah.
But I used to find it quite, you know, I used to find it quite tragic, especially in Coventry, where I'm from, where guys would be mooching around, mimicking Bruce Lee and pretending to be Chinese. And you're like, come on, guys, please. And then I was the same with you. When Jackie Chan came, I looked at it and I was like, you're playing a bit of a minstrel here. You know, like that. You're like, I'm playing it for laughs and Armor of God, like all of the movies. Like between you and me, I didn't get back into Jackie Chan until Rush Hour. And then like, honestly. And then, you know, then really did I get into that because of that? Or was it because I like the buddy comedies, like the Mel Gibson, like before Mel Gibson totally lost his mind, right?
I mean, he had done, and the reason why I felt betrayed as if it was my place to be is because he had also done Snake and Crane Arts of Shaolin.
Yeah.
Now, in the original version of Snake and Crane Arts of Shaolin, the opening credits are about 5 minutes long. Whatever it was that we paid to see that movie, we earned it back times over just watching the opening credits. And so I knew that Jackie Chan had that kind of ability and skill. So then to do the Kung Fu comedy, I was like, you know, I don't know, right? So, you know, but
Yeah, but you see, again, it's like with me, I could take Sammo Hung because he's just a fat Chinese dude, and like who could do a bit of kicking that, and he looked like a Chinese opera guy. You know what I mean? Like, whereas Jackie Chan was, with me, I looked at him and was like, right, if you'd have played it right, got his haircut correctly, and maybe managed to bump off Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lowe, he might have been the next Bruce Lee. You know? Well, I'm showing my age here when it's like, yeah, Bruce Lee died, yeah, but 5 clones came out and none of them look like him. You know what I mean? So, so that's what piqued your interest. So, how did you get into doing physically martial arts? What did you start off with?
I started probably from once I got interested. I had a collection of Bruce Tegner books.
Yeah.
Right. And there was this one. I have no idea what the name of it was because it wasn't a book with photographs. It was actually with like pencil drawings and what have you. So I have no idea what that was, but that was my start. Then after a while, I'm saying, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, just copying what I see from the movies. But I knew that I was not going to join a karate school. So Shotokan karate was an option, but I knew there's no way. I'm a Bruce Lee fan. I'm not joining a traditional school. So there was, again, you ready for this? There was a branch of Wushu Quan in Barbados because Carl Critchlow went to university in England and got his black belt from C.K. Chang and was able to come back to Barbados and open up an international branch of I'm pretty sure it's London-based Wushu Quan. So again, it's you people.
They get everywhere. Well, I'm Irish, so at the moment,
right?
It's all going off at the moment. So I'm trading on my passport here, on the Irish passport. But so this is just as you're saying it. I've got like these pictures in my head where I'm going. You're in Barbados. You can be on the beach all day, play a bit of music, listen to some reggae, chill out. Now you're going to sweat your ass off in the gym and go for it. It's crazy.
So there was a long period of time where I did stuff in my backyard. Then I joined Wushu Quan. Then I became an annoyance at Wushu Quan because I was talking about Bruce Lee all the time. So they kind of unceremoniously asked me to retire.
Oh,
so I went back to my backyard, so now by this time, Bruce Lee's passed away. Mito Uehara has started Fighting Stars magazine.
Yeah.
So so we're being relatively inundated with Bruce Lee material and what have you. This became a source of information. And you know where this was produced, right? In England.
Oh, those damn limeys, they get everywhere.
Right. So So everything that I could get my hands on related to Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do, that's what I did. Yeah. So I was self teaching from books, from the fighting method books and that type of stuff. Until in 1980, I had an extended trip to Seattle. And when I was there, I got a chance, I think twice, to spend some time with Jesse Glover's little brother, Michael.
Right.
Right. I didn't get to Taki Kimura. And that's just because I didn't know, I had never been to Seattle before, but I knew what role Seattle played in Bruce Lee's life. And my friends in Seattle happened to know Michael Lee. So that's how I was able to train there. They didn't know about Taki Kimura and what have you. So I never got to see him. So in 1980, that was my first visit to Bruce Lee's gravesite.
Right.
And then that became an annual pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Until the summer of 83. And that's when I had the realization that paying respects, as I've said many times before, paying respects to the deceased source of Jeet Kune Do would get you only so far. So you have to check out the living source. Now, everything from 1971 to 1983, when it came, 71 to 83, but then also 73 to 83, everything that I had seen pointed to one person as the successor.
Yeah.
Right? Bruce Lee's successor. And so in the summer of 83, I signed up to train with Dan Inosanto. And I tell people all the time, it wasn't that I wanted to somehow, Mick, I knew that the answer or the approach was not go learn Jeet Kune Do from Dan Inosanto.
Yeah.
Somehow I knew the approach was go train with this guy and see what you can get from that experience. Right? Now, this, which is March of 1976. This was this might have been the first time that I'd seen in a magazine, right? So there's this article. The title is The Continuing Story of Jeet Kune Do.
Yes.
Right? Through Dan Inosanto. So this is my original from 76.
Wow.
This is it, right? So in the pictorial sequences, right? So there's Jeet Kune Do technique and what have you, right? But then in the very back, at the very end, there's this, right? And so now you and I are going to annoy certain people in the online world, right? Okay. But here's what's even more significant about that is that in this issue, there was also this article.
Ouch.
Right? So this article now talks about
yes.
Okay. So this was part of the inspiration. But I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I was going to go to California and I was going to hang out with Dan Inosanto for a week. And then I was going to spend a week with a guy named Francis Fong. Because I knew that, right? Yeah, that guy. Because I knew that Inosanto was Bruce Lee's successor. And I knew that Bruce Lee had trained in Wing Chun. So I'm just a kid. I just want to have the experience. People in Barbados are like, but you don't know these people. I'm like, right. They go, you don't know what they're going to have you do. I go, right. They go, so if you don't know, why are you going? I'm like, because that's how you find out. That's how you go from not knowing to knowing.
That's a pioneer.
And, yeah. And so I went out there and there was a guy that I saw and I was very impressed by his ability. Tall Viking looking guy. Okay. Blonde guy. Right. Fairly athletic and what have you. And then I found out that he was not from California. He was an Inosanto student, but he was not from California. He was from a place called Minnesota.
I think I know this guy.
And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. You can get good without being from California.
Yeah.
And so that
was when California was a decent place to live in. Now it's like, you know, the end of us or whatever. Yeah, now it's zombie apocalypse time. Yeah.
So it was a kind of a subconscious messaging to me, because again, the initial intention was to spend 2 weeks, go back home to Barbados, and show the guys in Barbados what I had learned. And Sifu Dan said to me, he goes, look, you're the first person from your part of the world who's ever come out to see us. He goes, so if you really want to get this, you definitely should try to show it to people, back home. I was like, okay, right? And then he said something like, so you've got about a year's worth of material. And I thought to myself silently, this is ridiculous. There's no way that this is a year. I spent a week. You can't give me a year, right? Until the summer of '84, when I get to St. Louis, Missouri for that summer camp, and I realize it. Looking at my notes and what have you, there was still stuff from '83 that I had not touched. So did that in '84, repeated St. Louis in '85. By October of '85, the whole thing about instructorship had become a deal. And so again, I'm still the first guy from that part of the world. So I was accepted into the instructorship program. And then now today I'm talking to the great Mick Tully.
Oh, no, please. I had to mute myself there when you were just saying that. Let me just put this cybernetic in. I'm like the worst. If you order the Borg from Temu, this is what happens, right? If you're a Star Trek fan, you got that. Anyone else wasted on you? No, you just said something there. It's funny because around about, I want to say about 86, 87, the magazines in the UK, Rick Young was starting to write a little bit. Bob was starting to write. And your journey is very similar to mine because with me, I was quite lucky because at least I had an example to follow. So I used to see, I'd see Dan Inosanto. Like, I was never really a Bruce Lee fan. I liked some of his stuff, but then when I saw Way of the Warrior, I saw Guru Dan, and then I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? Started reading anything to do with Jeet Kune Do in any of the magazines.
Yeah.
And then this character, Rick Young's turning up, and he's only a postman, he says, in Edinburgh, but he's managing to get over every year. And then he went on the program, and then Guru Dan backdated it. I think he whatever way it worked out, Rick had trained with him a couple of times, and he hadn't really approached to go on the instructor program, which is quite a funny thing because for a long time it was the Holy Grail. And it was one of those, you had guys training and they were, I don't want to ask how to get on the program. And with me, I was really lucky because Terry Barnett just turned around to me and goes, would you like to be an instructor in the Guru Dan? And I was like, oh, in my wildest dreams, I couldn't imagine it. He goes, let me just put you forward. So him and Rick put me forward. But they'd all, like yourself, they'd already pioneered that. But again, being a kid from Coventry and going, right, I'm going to go over to America. And with me, I didn't really want to go and train with Guru. I trained with Guru Dan in the UK. And LA, just speaking to Rick Young and a couple of guys, and obviously Phil Norman and a lot of the guys, and Brendan Westman, who had the connection with Rick anyway, they were like, trust me, you're going to go to California and you're going to be like Marmite, man, because half of those guys will love you and the other half are going to hate you because they won't like it. They won't like your sense of humor. And he said, but the guys in Minneapolis will really like you. And with me, what really drew me to Rick Fay was the fact that it wasn't Rick Fay, it was the Minnesota Kali group. And on a subconscious level, I was like, this guy has enough belief in his own ability or as a person to, instead of saying it was him, to be a collective, to be a group. And I wanted to be more of that than being, when we start martial arts, you're that Ronin, you're that master of samurai. I don't want friends. And, you're like Bruce Wayne without the $1 billion. Yeah. And then after a while, you admit that I'm just quite a sad, lonely person. I'd like to make some friends, strangle them or hit them with a stick or punch them in the face and stuff. And that's what drew me to the Kali group. But what drew me, like yourself, to Inosanto was, it was funny because even in the mid 80s, when I started martial arts, I remember looking at some of these guys, and we can go into it later, but you see these tragic fanboys And they were like, Bruce, he was faster than any other human. And I'm like, he was a 5'7" Chinaman who was in good shape. I'll give you that. He was in great shape. But put him up against Brock Lesnar, I don't know, Bruce. That might be a bad day at the office for you. And I just didn't like the beatification around Bruce. And then I between you and me, I'll say it to not embarrass you, but I always got a bad vibe off the Bruce Lee estate, because I was thinking, when they run out of selling lunch boxes, they're going to come after us, because like we're interested in the martial arts and not the money. And they were just interested in selling T-shirts and lunch boxes. And then when those sales started going, that's when they came looking at Jeet Kune Do, which we can talk about, and how they're, the nucleus and all of that all that silliness. It's like, right, you're all going to be the same level as the guy who taught you. I don't think so. So if we can just backtrack a little bit, first time you see Dan Inosanto moving, right? And bear in mind, he still moves amazingly now, right? But we're talking, so my maths, I think I might be right here. Are you 43 years in now with a relationship with Guru Dan?
42. Yeah.
42.
Right. 42.
So 42. So if that's the case, you were meeting a 42, 43-year-old Dan Inosanto?
Let's see. I met him actually on July 24th, 1983. So I met him on his 47th birthday.
Well, as a 56-year-old man, I was a different man at 47 than I am today. I've got, the thing is, I was great. And again, as I always say to Rick, I always say this to Rick Fay, between Rick and Guru Dan, any advice they've ever given me has come back to haunt me. Like with Guru will say it and I'll just believe it. With Rick, because he's not really a father figure, he's like a sifu, like an older brother type relationship. Like he'll give me advice and he'll be like, you're not always going to have that shot, Mick. And I'll always have that. You're not always going to be the hammer. Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And I get to 55 and, I'm starting to wear shoes that lesbians wear and stuff. That's when you're getting old, when you're buying Skechers. And you're like, you're looking at it, you go, oh, I'll just wear a comfortable shoe now. I don't care about the style. But yeah, a 47-year-old Dan Inosanto must have been something to behold, right? Yeah.
And his assistant was Cass Magda. And I'm pretty sure we started with double stick. Right. And my brain exploded and I was like, that's it. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I want to move. I want to be able to move like that.
Right? And so it's so funny you say that, Dwight, because that was exactly my thoughts. None of this, does it work? Oh, is it real world? All the bullshit these guys come out with. I just looked at these guys moving. It was poetry in motion. I was like, I just want to move like, so if I move as fluidly as that, then my thought processes hopefully will be as fluid as that. And it's that open-mindedness and, but you know yourself, you'll never meet anybody as enthusiastic as Dan Inosanto when it comes to new stuff. Like he literally, I've said this on several occasions. Myself and Terry Barnett, Guru showed us years ago when he was doing his Khmer boxing. So he was doing the 20 rounds a week, like in the ring. And after 5, I was like, Guru, I'm tired watching this. You know what I mean? And he was training with Omri then. And so when you started, predominantly more Kali, and was Jeet Kune Do was just something that he was doing as a side class, or what was the situation?
So it was right around that time from what I've discovered. There's a thing about him making the promise to Bruce Lee to not commercialize JKD and what have you, right? So that's why Larry Hartzell and Tim Tackett, they were also on the roster. So anybody who wanted to attend CMAA and train in Jeet Kune Do could go sign up to train with Larry and Tim. Okay. And that was how it was. That by 84, Hartzell was still there I don't recall if Tackett was on the roster in 84 and 85, but Hartzell was there, and Vunak had been added to the roster of instructors. So with Inosanto, the way I got JKD training with him was being in class at the Inosanto Academy.
Yeah.
And then in 89, when I started bringing him to Miami for seminars, then because now I've been with him for 6 years, I have my own school. As his student, that's when he makes sure that the Jeet Kune Do stuff is also trained and or taught. So there's private lessons while he's in town, right? But then there's also a JKD section, let's call it, on during the seminar hours, right? But and this is where I'll lose certain people. It's all JKD, right? When you understand why what is being trained and taught, when you understand why, then you get the Jeet Kune Do connection. So you could look at it. So, you know, there are people with the same initials as Bruce Lee who might hear this interview, right, and be very upset with me saying it's all JKD, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't. I'm not saying. Oh yeah, if two people are doing double stick, that's the same thing that Bruce Lee did. That's not what I'm saying. It's why are these two people doing double stick? Because there are people who train double stick because they want to train in Filipino martial art. And then there are people who train double stick because double stick lends itself to the development of an ability that can be applied elsewhere. So there's a difference. For me, there's a difference between, as a JKD practitioner, there's a difference for me why I've trained in Pencak Silat, why I've trained in Muay Thai, why I've trained in Boxe Française Savate, why I've trained in Filipino martial arts. There are specific reasons for doing that, which are not the same reasons as people who want to study those arts as individual arts. That's never been the goal for me. It's to gain an understanding that I can now bring back to my Jeet Kune Do. That's always been it.
It's so funny you said this, because as you're saying it, right, first two things that come to me is like, whenever because I've got a couple of characters come do some training with me, and they're great guys. And they don't want to do any Filipino martial arts at all. I just want to do what Bruce did. And then, and I'm like, so you can't bash people around the head anymore. And even if you get try and get them to do Thai pads. God, if only I could do. If only I had the timing of Chai. Where it's like bang over the top. Where's your cover? I can't do that. So with me, I'm like, right, well, do you know what? What you might need is a bit of grappling as well. Oh yeah, but what if 5 of their mates come in? I went, no. It's mano a mano is what we're looking for here. I said, if you worry about their mates, how about we get rid of Jeet Kune Do and we go to the art that is good for multiple opponents, which is Kali, which you say is shit, mate. And then they go, oh no, but I just want to do the Bruce stuff. And you go, right, okay. And you're doing Ping Choi Gua Choi, right? And they're just not getting it. You're throwing the junk, Ping Choi Gua Choi trap, Pak Tao Da. And they're not getting it. You go, look, I'll tell you what, grab a stick, mate. High inward, low backhand, high backhand return, switch. Do that for half an hour. Then they can trap. And they're like, yeah, but I don't want to do that. And I'm like, listen, nobody turns around to greatest example, probably the best boxer of our era, Usyk, right? Alexander Usyk, right? Alexander Usyk goes out and he's doing his road work and he's running, right? People don't drive past him, wind down the window in the car and say, mate, you're never going to be able to make it in the London Marathon running like that, mate. No, I'm not a marathon runner, mate. I'm boxing. This helps me for that one bit that I need. And we haven't stumbled into it. I wanted to talk about this anyway. The whole thing about the politics with JKD is, first of all, you can always tell the guys who are real Bruce Lee nuts, right? Because they've got three things that are usually going with them, right? Which is usually they're single or incels, right? That's one. Secondly, they're either morbidly obese, right? And you're like, delete your browser history if you feel like you're having a heart attack, mate, because it's not going to end well. You know what I mean? You're not just looking at the Bruce Lee stuff online. You're looking at something else. And then thirdly, it's these characters who are like, they don't realize that, you know, we've moved on since 1973. The way that Bruce fought in 73, bear in mind, one of my favorite things about Bruce Lee that I found out, and it was a few years ago I found out, it was like, Bruce Lee had a license to carry a concealed weapon in LA. And you're like, but this is Bruce Lee. How come he's carrying a gun if he's Bruce Lee? And you go, yeah, because Bruce saw what was coming down the pipe. So,
well, yeah, I mean, he was a realist, you know, right? But I'll take you back a couple of seconds. You know, if somebody came to me and said, I just want to do what Bruce did, right? I go, okay. So tell me what's your experience, right, in what Bruce did. Where have you seen what Bruce did? Because the only place you would have seen it is the movies. So if you come to me and you say, I only want to do what Bruce did. I'm like, okay, you want to do what Bruce did functionally or theatrically? Yeah. You see, because I know that you saw him in the movies. So if you saw him in the movies and that's what drove you to want to do what he did, then you got to do double stick. Because he did double stick in the movies.
He did it, but this is a crazy thing, because it's like, if we take this to its logical conclusion, it's like, and in a parallel universe, whatever God you believe in would have been kind. And, you know, it's that whole silly thing where it's like, you know, the Beatles are dying in the wrong order, you know, where it's like, why did you take John, and what, like, we could have spared Ringo. Why did you take John and George first, right? But in a parallel universe, whatever God you believe in would have spared Bruce Lee and would have killed Steven Seagal, right? And the thing is, imagine if trust me, man, that's a dark individual. But if Steven Seagal, imagine if Steven Seagal had been Bruce Lee, right? You would have a bunch of guys running around, like looking like homeless baristas from Starbucks with like a bit of a half man bun ponytail, running like girls, right? And playing blues guitar. And we'll talk about this. I want to get you on this later. Dwight, have you ever heard Steven Seagal's reggae album? Look, don't look at me like that. One of the main tracks on this seminal piece of work is "Me Want the Punani." That is literally a song he wrote.
That is not true.
Dwight, how about this? If Steven Seagal did not record an album, reggae standards, in patois, right? Let me
make a note.
Dwight, I'm telling you, if I've made this up, if this is the effect of brain fog and long COVID, then I am going to take you out and I'm buying you the best porterhouse steak, a couple of pints of Dragon Stout, and washed down with a bottle of Ting, my friend. I'm telling you now, that's a night out, right? So Steven Seagal,
yeah, okay.
So no, honestly. So so getting back to my point is, when we've beatified Bruce to this point that he's almost like a demigod, right?
Yeah.
What point? Yeah, am I right, Will? Yes. Will's giving me the thumbs up. Trust me, right? Bit of a sidebar. Myself and Will, Will, thumbs up on this. We were going to go to Russia to interview Seagal, weren't we? And it didn't end well. Well, it ended well for us because we didn't get associated with it. But yeah, when his story comes out, it's that. So no, getting back to the beatification thing. Bruce was an actor, and it's like, was he a great philosopher? I think so. Was he a visionary? Yes, I do think so. Do I think a lot of it was zeitgeist, right place, right time? Definitely, because you've got to remember, if you have a look behind you, right, you've got two pictures of two cultural icons, right? So here's the great thing, like unbelievable cultural icons. So Bruce, what did he do? Bruce didn't let us down by getting too old to embarrass us. Like that's if we're honest, right? Because if Bruce Lee started doing Gap adverts for jeans, would we think he was that cool, right? Yeah. But then what did Bob Marley do? Bob Marley, like, and it's really funny because people talk about Bob, but they don't realize, yeah, he died young, but he wasn't a young man when he passed away. You know, he'd lived a good life, but what he'd done was he'd stayed authentic to himself. Yeah, am I right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like the Bob Marley you met when he was 20 was the Bob Marley you met literally before he passed away, but maybe a bit wiser. That would be it. So this is what gets me onto this whole thing about Jeet Kune Do, right? And I'd like your thoughts, but I think I know what your thoughts are. Right. So a martial arts philosophy that's based on creating a self, you know, looking at the id. I'm getting all Freudian. I'm sounding like Jordan Peterson here, right? So it's like you look at yourself, you look at the ego, you embrace the ego, you kill the ego, and then years later, if you do it right, you're one of these characters where I'm enlightened, I've foregone all my violent ways, yada, yada, yada. That isn't me, by the way. Yeah, mine is still saying people still infuriate me. I like, yeah, trust me, if we could do an episode of that Purge, you know, where one night you just kill everyone that you don't want, and you're like, because I'm not enlightened enough yet, right? But this is the thing. So this whole martial arts ethos that Bruce Lee like really propagated, you know, the once fluid man, all of this stuff, yeah, being an individual. Why are all his real adherents, you know, keepers of the flame? They call him the founder now. You know, that's L. Ron Hubbard level shit. When I hear people talk about Bruce Lee being the founder, I'm like, if he met you, I've got a sneaky feeling you would embarrass the shit out of that guy. Because like he's basically created a religion. Well, he didn't. As I said, he died. He died before he was able to turn around and say, listen, guys, grow up, be individuals. Are you in agreement or what?
Okay, I personally do not have an issue with the idea of Bruce Lee being the founder, and that is because right here, right there, okay, in the Art and Philosophy book, it says, to most people at the Academy, Bruce Lee is their Qigong, not their Sifu. Qigong means the grandfather of the method and their instructor's instructor. Bruce Lee is also the Sijo to most of the students here. Sijo means the founder of the method they practice. So personally, I don't have an issue with the idea of the founder, but it's within this context.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Right. Now, there are people, and that's a difficult thing when we have these Jeet Kune Do discussions. Context matters. You see? So there are people out there. So for me, when I say founders, because, well, in my instructor's book, that term was used. But so it doesn't really go beyond that. Right. It's not a religious connotation or what have you. But people don't understand context when they have Jeet Kune Do discussions. I got into a thing online a few weeks ago. A guy said, is it essential to study other arts in Jeet Kune Do? And I said, well, it depends on what you mean by study. And so he goes off on, oh, well, here's the Cambridge Dictionary definition of study and whatever. And I said, well, if you understood Jeet Kune Do language, you would get what I'm talking about. So then he goes off in the definition of language, but he misses the definition that says that language can apply to the dialect, so to speak, of a particular group. Yeah. Well, there's Jeet Kune Do dialect, because if I go to you, okay, so you just talked about Pin Choi Gua Choi, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But why don't I have to say, well, what do you mean by Pin Choi Gua Choi? Because that means something to us.
We know.
Exactly. Right. See, so now you talk about Pin Choi Gua Choi. So I go, okay, well, yeah, because you could go from HIA to ABC. You're going to know exactly what I mean because we're JKD men. Right. That is a language. But this guy just could not wrap his mind around that Jeet Kune Do has its own language, right? And so it's because in the context that I said, depends on what you mean by study, he's thinking whatever. Now, that same guy recently asked another question about which is better. Actually, he said which is best, but he doesn't understand positive, comparative, and superlative. Having one instructor or having multiple instructors. They don't even understand the genesis of their own thinking. First of all, why do you think it's it's appropriate, let's use that adjective, to ask such a question in this day and age? Who introduced on a widespread basis in the martial art world the idea of training under more than one person?
Little Filipino guy, I think. Yeah.
Right? Okay. Right? Where did that idea come from? So now it's not unthought of to pose such a question.
Well, you see this. Yeah, but you see, this is the thing, Dwight. So you've hit on something here which is I find fascinating. So, having the one instructor, it's a bit of a trope, right? So you know that one guy that I can go to. One of my favorite scenes of any movie ever is when Bruce Leroy goes to see his master, and he goes, "No, you need to go and find this guy. Wundum Doi. Wundum Goi. Wundum Goi. Do you remember? And he was the fortune cookie machine, right? The robot in The Last Dragon." And he said, but I need answers, and I haven't got those answers for you anymore. And he goes, "Anyway, I have to go." He goes, "Are you on a pilgrimage? Are you on a pilgrimage to seek knowledge?" He goes, "No, I'm going to visit my sister in Newark," I think it was. I can't remember. But it's been that long since I've seen it. But you see, with a lot of these guys, you need the one instructor. I see two things. First of all, I see hero worship, which is when the guy, like, the guy who insists on being called guru or grand master. Yeah. And you meet that guy and you're like, yeah, you remind me of David Koresh in a gi, mate. That's what you are. You know what I mean? So they're building a cult. And then the other one is, it's like, mate, you're looking for the answers from one guy. That's like reading one book. Like history's taught us one thing, right? Which is, if we have a strict adherence, like, there's a reason why there's a few different versions of the Bible now, right? Because guess what? The Latin one was good. King James one was pretty good. That, like, I have to admit, the Mormon one at the end is my favorite, with the gold plates and the 13-year-old kid. But I was the only one who was able to read that. And you're like, oh, come on, please. But anyway, as I said, there has to be an evolution. And also, you need to get more than one answer. Like Guru Dan is, what I love about this is like who's the guy who started the whole idea of cross-training? Guru Dan, right? So when Bruce Lee passed away, I love how, I'm doing it a disservice here, but I love the way that Rick Fay does this, where it's like, he said, Guru's a great teacher and he's an academic and he understands who he is. He said he doesn't understand what he is to us sometimes, because we see him as a genius, but he thinks he's just, I'm just Dan. And you're like, no, you're way more than that. But it was like Rick said, it was so funny because Rick said, you're at this position where everyone's looking for you for the answers because you're the next guy. And like, it'd be a real disservice for me not to mention, right, who I really like, one day is on my bucket list, is to go and train with Andy Kimura, because the way that Taki and Andy Kimura dealt with their relationship, or still do, their relationship with Bruce Lee and their place in Jeet Kune Do, that is exactly what that era of Jeet Kune Do should be all about, which is, this is what we did in this time period, and it is like kept there, right? And then Guru Dan was there going, but I need to understand more. So what's he do? He goes from a character like Bruce Lee, who's this force of nature, who's the next guy he wants to go and train with? Arjan Choi. It's like, how many people do that, where they go and they get somebody that can physically just amaze them? Like, that just speaks volumes about who he is. And then famously with Guru Dan as well, he's got 4 different BJJ instructors. That's one art, Dwight, yeah? And he's picked 4 different ones. So this whole thing where the guys go, well, I only need one instructor. Imagine listening to the same song at karaoke every night for the rest of your life. Yeah, but that's what it is, right? And Jeet Kune Do was always supposed to be like this vehicle for personal development, and then like, right, okay, but we're not going to go past 1973. And I just don't get it. But that's going to lead me on to something, right? Which I really want to discuss this, right? We talked before about how much time you spend online. Bear in mind, you compared to me online, I go in, you know me, I pull the pin out of a hand grenade, throw it in, disappear for about 3 hours, come back, watch everyone doing Klingon blood feuds and threaten to kill each other, right? Whereas you actually try and bring some harmony. And I've never told you this, so I'm going to be really honest with you on this one. Kudos to you, Dwight, because the people that you've had on your show, some of these guys are literal brain donors, mate. There's only a couple of them, and me and you know who they are, right? And I've seen them. I'm going, this is going to end so badly for you, because you get, and you're really understanding, and you're not mugging them off in any way. But by just allowing some of these characters to talk, you're like, there's nothing I can say about you to make you look bad that the last hour hasn't done for you. You did it, right? And I'm not saying that you've done it in a bad way or there's any malevolence behind it, but you've given a platform to across the whole board of what JKD is all about, right? So that leads me
because I don't, if there's a number of people who gravitate towards an individual, then to me that means that individual offers something somewhere somehow. So if I can get him on my show, maybe I can discover what that is. You see? So because as self-absorbed as my detractors believe I am, and I'm not trying to sound mystical or whatever, but the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, the interview podcast, is really a tribute to Dan Inosanto, because it's me trying to be open-minded the way he has demonstrated open-mindedness. So he would not close himself off to an individual, right, or what have you. So I'm not going to go, okay, well, I'm going to do a podcast, but I'm only talking to people who agree with me. I'm only talking to people who are also of the Inosanto lineage. No way. Now, there are people outside of the Inosanto lineage who I have approached, and because I'm an Inosanto boy, they're like, no, I will never talk to you. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's my loss, right? Because I'd love to be able to pick their brains, so to speak, because I'm interested in what makes people tick. So I'll talk to just about anyone, not everyone, just about anyone. I'll talk to you. There's a couple people that will never make it onto my show, and that's nobody has to know why that is. But other than them, I'll talk to just about anybody, right? Even people who I can tell from the way they jump into a post and start their interactions and the way that they'll talk about me, right? I can tell, okay, this person might not be a fan. Guess what? To me, that would probably be a great interview. Knowing that you're not a fan of mine, I would love to talk to you.
Yeah. You see, that's the one I've had that a couple of times, where it's like, after about half an hour, and you go, you feel good now, don't you? What? Yeah, I'm a really nice guy, aren't I? Yeah, but your online persona, and I'm like, nothing online should be real about you anyway. because it's the most ersatz, ridiculous, parallel universe level existence ever. You know, it's like, as you were saying this, it's like one of the reasons why I tune in all the time, and it's always the same thing. I've got to give it, but I'd be remiss of me to do this. I go in there and I ask where Mark Black and Terry Valor are all the time.
Right.
You know, and then, I was like, to Mark Black, I said, I hope that woman's still not crying who's chained up on the, to the radiator in your cellar and stuff. And it's just a joke, Mark. I'm only joking, right? But no, it's like that. I like it because a bit like my social media profiles, I don't like the echo chamber. You know, like you know yourself, this is like, which is going to lead me into something, right? And we'll skirt around it a little bit, right? So politics and martial arts were always pretty bad, but years ago, and bear in mind, Dwight, you're not going to be allowed to get onto the moral high ground here, my friend, because you were literally an OG in regard to politics in martial arts, because I've seen the letters going into magazines back in the day. So, and bear in mind, that like if I was a little bit older, I'd have been the same, right?
Oh, but, okay.
Yeah.
So back in the COVID days, right, when we couldn't go anywhere, my siblings and I started a monthly Zoom call, video call, right? Because in my family, the birthdays start with mine in June, and then we've got a birthday in July, one in August, an aunt in September, parents in October, another sibling in November, another sibling in December, right? And it was in one of those calls, my brother said to me, oh, when you got laid off from Eastern Airlines for that short period of time, you wrote a letter to the CEO of the company telling him why it was a mistake to lay you off. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. So Tim Becker puts this letter up from 1987 or something. And I'm like, I have zero memory of writing that. Zero.
Yeah, but but Dwight, if you don't mind, but I can't believe I'm going to quote a Roland Emmerich movie here now. But you remember in Independence Day, right? And Bill Paxton is the president of the United States, and Will Smith's there, and Harry Connick Jr. Will Smith, when Will Smith was still Will Smith. Now the jury's out on that fella. But anyway. Like he beat aliens and then let his wife hit him. Anyway, that's a different story. But anyway, where Paxton turns around and he goes, wait a minute, aliens? And you never told me? He goes, plausible deniability, my friend. And that's the truth. It's like, plausible deniability only goes so far. Now, anyway, so what I was going to say is, so in martial arts, we've always had a load of politics anyway, right? And then, again, I can't believe I'm going to quote Nick Cage, right, from The Rock. When they find out about that Zyklon B or whatever, it's that gas that they have got. And he goes, what? He goes, very horrible. I wish we could invent it. That's me to a degree with social media, because it's given a platform to people who shouldn't be allowed to talk, or at the very least shouldn't be allowed to talk that loudly. That's that's the thing, right? So, and I'm one of them, by the way. I'm to thine own self be true, right? But the thing is, there's this division now where we used to just argue about, like original JKD and concepts. Yeah. And now we're arguing about Ukraine. I don't know any Ukrainians, and nothing to do. Arguing about Brexit. We're arguing about immigrants. And it's like, I'm seeing that permeate now into the martial arts world with friends of mine. And, it's the bit where, and I'm very, very mindful of how I deal with a lot of this, because I see a lot of my friends getting really upset over stuff that I find really trivial. But I can't. I mean it. It's like, and what you like? It's like George Carlin said, right? If voting actually meant a damn, they wouldn't let you do it, right? It's as simple as this. So this division in martial arts now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you seen this explosion where it's now a case of it's so binary that I have to judge somebody on their political leanings, their emotional leanings, whatever? Or are you able to do what I'm doing, which is I'm able to just be like you with that letter that you wrote to the CEO. I'm just pretending and none of it existed, right? And it's like, that never happened. But yeah, it's something that actually is really. If you don't mind, I'll just quickly tell you, and I'm going to be it's the realest you're ever going to get me. And he's a good mutual friend of ours, and I love this man like a brother dearly. It's Kurt Cornwell. And Kurt posted something on social media only recently, and he got absolutely castigated for it. And it was something to do with it was RFK talking about the autism register type thing that they're looking at, right? I went and watched all of it. And when I watched all of it, take the sign bouts out. And the reason I'm saying all this, it will all come together. Context is everything. When I saw the whole address, I was like, okay, I can see where there's a couple of things where people would be a bit wary, but it wasn't anywhere near as savage as it looked when I only got the sound bites. But I wasn't really that bothered, so I don't have a dog in the fight here. But I saw how upset my friend Kurt was over this. And like where I'm going with this is martial arts is supposed to make us more humanitarian, more understanding. And you like, I've got to give him a shout out, even though I wind him up all the time. It's Paul McCarthy, right? Me and him are totally diametrically opposed politically, but I really like the guy. And he's going, oh, well, I don't like this about you. And I'm like, and that's 15% of me tops. 85 of me is ace. And but it's just something that's really got me. And I'm not saying you're way older than me, but I'd like a more sage take on this than I've got, where I'm just like that, ignore it. And with Kurt, it really made me question just the idea of a friend of mine hurting so much. And then he's posting it out there and he's not gauging responses or looking for likes. I know Kurt. I've known him for 20 years. Kurt's put it out there because this is inside of him and he just has to get it out. And he puts it out and he got absolutely hammered. And then he was like, I messaged him. I said, dude, I literally cried when I saw how upset you were, which is the truth. And like this level of polarization kills me, and me and Will have all, I do want your response, but I have to add this. One of the things that Will's been great at doing is being able to rein me in a little bit on some of my mad stuff. Because the thing is, like some of my mad stuff would actually get us way more clicks, but short term, it'd be short money, and just go in for that. Literally, you just go in for the shock value, and I know I can do the shock thing, but it's like where I'm going with my whole thing about all of this is, what do you think about this, and where do you think we're going to end up with it? This level of polarization. I know that's been such a long intro, but I had to give you time to think about what we're going to say. And please don't give me a 2-word answer. I'll be raging.
Well, so politics is politics, right? Whether it's martial art politics or governmental politics, let's call it. To me, what's important is to have as in-depth as possible an understanding of how people came to have the beliefs that they have. Because then I can do a better job of understanding where they're coming from. So many years ago, one of my personal strategies was, okay, if you want to understand why things are the way they are now, here's what you have to keep asking yourself. What came before? So then you identify a factor. Well, what came before that? So then you identify that factor. Well, what came before that? So now you identified that factor. So when it comes to Jeet Kune Do politics, one of the things that I have identified is, and I believe I have this right, it is the first magazine article that featured the idea of Bruce Lee's art disappearing because of whomever, and who has now surfaced to save it from disappearing. So it's exactly what you said. So this is before the internet, but it's not clickbait. I don't even know what the word would be, but it's still bait, because if we could put up A versus B article, we're going to sell more copies because we can introduce such and such, right? So when you see that, then you start to think, oh, okay, so why do some people, because of this statement, all I teach in Jeet Kune Do is what I got from Bruce. Well, geez, then that means that what you got from that's the real deal, because it's what you got from Bruce, right? Okay. But that does not address, that pretty much addresses physicality. It does not address mentality. Because if you got the Bruce Lee mentality, in my opinion, you would never limit yourself to what you got from Bruce. You would use what you got from Bruce as a springboard for seeing what else you can get from whatever of a source you can get it, and bring it back to what you're doing to develop yourself. That's my take on it. Okay. So, but I can understand why there would be a group of people who'd be like, oh my God, if all you're doing is the stuff that Bruce Lee showed you, I am going to hang with you, because then that means that I am getting as close as is humanly possible to Bruce myself through you. Now, on the other hand, there's a guy who spent time with Bruce Lee, and then after Bruce Lee passed away, went on to train not just with other people, for example, in Wing Chun, but went on to train in other arts that Bruce Lee didn't have much to do with. Well, how dare he? That is a betrayal of Bruce Lee. You spent time with the world's greatest martial artist, and he was not enough for you. I will never have anything to do with you. So I understand it. And 100%. Okay. So now in governmental politics, why are there are two groups of people in Washington, D.C., two major groups of people in Washington, D.C. And why are they there? They are there to do the bidding of the people. Okay. So why aren't we constantly discussing, if I'm in Washington, D.C., to do the bidding of my constituents, why am I not every day in deep discussion with even the opposition? Because they're there for the same reason. So the only job that we have is, well, our job is not to oppose each other. Our job is to see, well, what's your good idea that will benefit our constituents? Well, here's my idea. And now we toss these ideas back and forth. This is why the Jeet Kune Do dialogues exist. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Because it is born, the whole idea was born out of my mentality, out of my take on things. Okay, because so it's about your level of personal, the level of information, let's call it even education, that you have about the situation. You see, because if you're a low information voter, if you're a low information Jeet Kune Do aficionado, you're gonna have a little bit of a rough time understanding the big picture.
Well, you see, you've hit on something that I use all the time, which is you absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and then add what is specifically your own. And you go, right, okay. So I have over my 56 years on the planet, I've seen people being given treasure. Literally, I've seen them being given something that is worth. And I'm not talking about, like, I could do the classic, it's one of my favorite Larry Hartsell stories, where he turns in and he goes, we're not teaching martial arts, we're all gardeners. So I'm coming in here, he goes, you guys have got nice gardens coming in, but I'm bringing you a different way of growing. And he goes, and I've got this new type of manure, it's really going to help your garden grow. And he said, and if you know it's manure, then it's great. But for some of you guys, you might just think it's shit, right? And it's like, which is a really cool way of looking at it, right? But the reject what is useless one, that is the one that gets me, because it's like, so useless what? Yeah, I tried an armbar once and it didn't work. And you're like, have you ever seen a toddler try and walk? Imagine like the first time you step and you fail, you go, oh, fuck it, man, I'm a wheelchair for me now. There's nothing wrong with your legs. Yeah, but I tried that walking shit, it didn't really work out. It was the same with the nappy, I tried it and I had to wipe my own bum, and I thought, I'll just wear a diaper for the rest of my life. And you go, no, mate, it's a bit more nuanced than that. Like the martial arts thing, it really gets me, because especially in Jeet Kune Do, it's like you're being told to think for yourself, and then you got a shitload of lemmings that just believe, like, again, I'm gonna reference one of the most random movies ever. Have you ever seen Mystery Men? About the shoveler? You never seen it? Mystery Men. It's
no,
it was based on these comics. It was a comic book called the Flaming Carrot Comic Books, and there's Pee-wee Herman's in it. He plays a guy called the Sphincter. So the Sphincter basically can just fart, right? No. So he's in it. But there's a guy called the Sphinx, and what is his superpower? Google this, guys. You'll enjoy this movie. It's a great movie. Eddie Izzard was in it when Eddie Izzard was still a person, and now he's a them, right? Anyway, that's where you got too much money. Anyway, there was a superhero called the Sphinx, and what his superpower was? He was mysterious. And Ben Stiller's like this going. He was called Mr. Furious, and Mr. Furious, his superpower was he could get angry. And like, it sounds really funny, right? But it's like, yeah, but that's the Hulk, isn't it? So anyway, he just sounds very mysterious. And I think that's what, with a lot of martial arts, especially Jeet Kune Do, is you get these characters. But first of all, online, if they're charismatic, and I'm going to be really truthful here, right? If some of you characters who have set up your own little cults are charismatic, got a news flash for you. It doesn't come over well on social media. You just look like boring bastards to me. But anyway, right, the charisma doesn't work. But there's an X factor to it that makes that, they've got, as you said, there's something about them, because it's the whole thing. I'm going to shit on my own theory here. It's like, not that many people can't be wrong. I don't know. Watch the Nuremberg rallies, mate. More like a few of them are wrong there, right? But anyway, we've shit all over some of these characters anyway. So let's get on to a much better topic, right? Which is the absolute magnet for just really talented individuals, not just in martial arts, but in the acting world and everywhere else. That is Marina Del Rey, man, because Guru Dan has some, he's had some high profile guys come and train with him, But it doesn't get any higher than Kobe Bryant in my eyes. Well, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but that was a height joke I just came out with there. So, tall men, right? But it leads me into being starstruck, and I know the answer to your most recent being starstruck, right? But first time, I'll let you do that in a minute. But who was the first? When was the first time you went into Guru Dan's classes and got starstruck, and who was it?
I partnered Brandon Lee in a class one time.
No way. The Crow. Really? The late, great. What was he like?
Yeah. I didn't bug him because I could tell that he didn't want anybody to know who he was or recognize him or whatever. So the attitude there was not to make a big deal that Bruce Lee's son is on the training floor, right? So I didn't do it, but I partnered him. The youngest of the Jacksons, Randy Jackson, he was there. He was there one time when I had flown out. He showed up. In the days of the Westminster location, right up in Playa del Rey, there was a Thursday morning class. My nickname for it was the Hollywood class, because I can remember being in that class and looking around and going, "Oh, that guy is from the little showdown in Little Tokyo," or "that guy is from this other movie," or whatever, right? Or so it's like watching Big Trouble in Little China, right? And you go, "Oh well, there's Jeff Amata. That's an Inosanto fixture right there."
Yeah.
And then you see Nathan Jung, the late great Nathan Jung, and you go, "Well, that's another Inosanto fixture right there," right? You know, and others. So there's been quite a few. I tell the story about Sifu Dan calling me to tease me that there was a guy that he and Jeff Amata were training. And I'm like, "Well, you train a lot of people." And he's like, "Yeah, but this guy's got the same initials as you." I go, "What, DW?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "He's famous." He goes, "Jeff and I are training him in Sword and Dagger and whatever for his new movie." I go, "Oh, Denzel." He goes, "Yeah, Denzel Washington," right? So, yeah, just for decades, that's what's been going on. When you're there and Tsuyoshi Abe shows up. I mean, I remember the first time I met Jeff Amata. I mean, it was relatively similar to how I felt about James Liu, right? The first time I met Jeff, because I had grown up on him as well. So Damon Caro. Now everybody doesn't know Damon Caro because he's not been what do the cool kids say, blown up,
Yes.
right? Okay, but I got pictures of me here in Miami demonstrating with the director of John Wick.
Yeah.
Okay, during an Inosanto seminar, right? Because I had requested that we take a comparative look at kickboxing methods. And so Sifu Dan brought with him one of the co-creators, I guess we could say, of STX kickboxing, Chad Stahelski. Okay, so and so being on the training floor, Burt Richardson during the time when Burt was doing the movie stuff also, right? So then in '93, when the producers and the makers of Only the Strong came to town and opened up the phone book, and they called every martial arts school and said, "Okay, we're doing a movie. You want to be in a movie?" And everybody that got that phone call said yes, right? And then you show up on set and they're like, "Okay, so what do you guys do?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you want me to do?"
Yeah.
Right? Because I come from a Jeff Amata school of stunt work, right? Yeah. So it's like, what do you want? What do you want us to do? And then they're like, well, they take a look at me, and because we showed them like double sword or whatever, and they're like, we have a machete scene that we're gonna do, right? I'm like, okay. And then they're like, but it's a capoeira movie and whatever, and so a lot of stuff that we do is going to be based on this thing called the Jenga. I go, okay, what does that look like? So they do the jingle, and I go, and my brain goes, oh, that's male triangle retreat.
Yeah.
So I get the job.
Yeah.
Because I can pull it off. Right.
And what was Mark Dacascos like to work with?
So the first day that Mark showed up on set, he's being introduced, and and everybody gets to say hello to him. And I get to say to him, Mark, you and I almost met 8 years ago when you were supposed to go down to Trinidad to do the demonstration for G. Anthony Joseph. But you got the call for, I think he got called away to do Conan at Universal Studios or something.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, oh, yeah. Right? And I'm like, yeah, I went down because I helped Dan Inosanto to do his demonstration. He's like, what? He goes, you're Dan Inosanto's student? I go, yeah, I'm kind of like his representative in Miami. And that was it. I was in.
Yeah.
So every time he came on set, right, he'd like just come and spirit me away, and he and I would talk. Right? Yes.
Yeah, I was sorry to interrupt, but round about that time, so I was in Germany in 92, 93. So I was getting a couple of magazines sent over by my wife, and then I was getting there was two publications in Germany, and then an Italian one, and that was around the time where things were really blowing up, as you said earlier, because Eric was there. I think it was Bloodsport 3 that he might have done at that stage, and you mentioned a few of the guys, so it's really funny because it's like Damon Caro, Chad Stahelski, Dave Leach. You're talking about these are the top end guys, and it's mad because I don't know if you saw it. I absolutely loved it. It was Dave Leach that did the last Fall Guy, right? So he did the remake of the Fall Guy, and I loved it because of all of the in jokes of the stuntman. Because again, the stuntman, it is Colt Seaver's time. You don't even get to kiss the girl at the end, right? So you're the guy, you make Eastwood look so fine, from the TV show, right? But it's that they don't normally make the transition, but like all three of them did. It's like, I remember Damon, I think it was Damon did The Watchmen, did the fight scenes for that.
Yeah,
and then
I think so.
Yeah, and then it's like, it's mad because all of them coming out of the Inosanto thing, which
we should mention, we shouldn't forget to mention Tsuyoshi Abe.
Yeah, Tsuyoshi, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Right, and then here's the thing, right? Do you know who Jonathan Eusebio is?
No.
Yeah, see, because dig this, right? So we have the generations under Inosanto in terms of students and instructors and what have you. We have that same generational thing when it comes to the stunt work out of the Inosanto Academy. Right. Jonathan Eusebio, right, trained in CSW with Eric Paulson and all those guys. Okay. So Jonathan was kind of, I guess we could say, he was like, so the way that you could say that, that Chad Stahelski was an understudy of Jeff Amata in terms of generation.
Yeah.
Jonathan Eusebio is like a Chad Stahelski understudy. But
right.
Jonathan Eusebio is it. So he is now that Chad is director, Jonathan is fight coordinator and stunt coordinator for John Wick.
This is
right.
This is a crazy thing, Dwight. It's like, because we're good men and we're men of ethics, right? I'm like, you original guys, where's all your Hollywood directors? Sorry, but but again, it's that whole thing where it's like you said, using Jeet Kune Do as a springboard and using it, because every single one of the guys we mentioned, and you mentioned him off camera beforehand. I actually sent him a message recently. I think he just got married. Richard Citrone, yeah, Batman baby, yeah. But these guys, like the commonality between them all is they've all followed that same path, which is right. Okay, the JKD got me to be really good at this level. So where can I translate that to the rest of my life? Right. So this is going to lead me on now to I'm going to selfishly I'm just going to ask, right? So if we were looking at like your heroes, right? Obviously, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Inspirations in life, martial arts, everything, right? And you can pick 5, right? I want to hear.
Only, let me make sure I'm clear. Only martial art, or
no,
just...
no, certainly not. No, just in life. I don't want this to feel like a Rorschach test either. It's not. Right. I'm not baselining you like a Scientologist or anything like that.
Yeah. Neville Goddard, Dan Kennedy, Dan Inosanto, Bob Marley, and Bruce Lee.
Now, I need to know who the first 2 gentlemen are.
Neville Goddard is we could call him oh God, what's a bit, we could call him the founder of an esoteric Christianity movement.
Right.
We could. I mean, that's not an accurate. Neville Goddard just happened to be a guy who was born in Barbados, moved to the States when he was age 18, and became somewhat of a mystic religious figure.
Right.
Okay. And so I came across his teachings years and years ago. And in listening to some of the old recordings of his and what have you, and being able to form mental images of where he's talking about and what he's talking about, and the fact that the Goddard name and the Goddard company that he talks about in his recordings, I worked with those people because there was a branch of the Goddard thing that did what we call the flight kitchen. So they put all the food on my aircraft. Right. Dan Kennedy is the Bruce Lee of direct marketing, direct response marketing in the US. Okay, he and his former partner Bill Glazer. The first time that I'm listening to the two of them in person on stage, it was a JKD presentation.
Right.
For me, it was a JKD presentation. And so Dan Kennedy was the Bruce Lee equivalent, and Bill Glazer was the Dan Inosanto equivalent.
Right.
Okay. Right. And then the other 3 are, pretty much self-explanatory. Inosanto because, well, literally, right? And I'm not using that word the way the young kids do. I mean it in its actual meaning. You and I would not be having this conversation if it wasn't for him.
No.
Right. Bruce Lee, because he is the original inspiration. And who was the other one I said? I can't remember.
Oh, right. Okay. But you see
what I said.
Well, the late, great, long lamented Bob Marley, mate. It's I literally, I called up literally the lyrics for Attention Song, right? His understanding of music and using music to free the tyranny of your mind and stuff, and just and it's like. We will. It's a nightmare, but we are going to have to wrap up. But there's a few things that I'm going to get you again for the simple.
But now, here's the thing. Okay, so you see Redemption Song and 3 Little Birds and One Love and all that, right? Yeah. Forget all that nonsense, right? And listen to Down Presser and listen to Fussing and Fighting.
Right. Okay. Well, one of the reasons I'm going to get you back is I famously. So in 1988, I went to see Public Enemy at the Brixton Academy. And I'm not saying I was the only white guy there, but I was one of 3 of us, right? And that was the first, and I got into rap and everyone couldn't work out. And I was like, you got to remember, I was born in England, but I went to school in Ireland, came back to England with an Irish accent. So nobody knows being about more marginalised. Like and they see the Irish, like you might know this, like where I'm from in Coventry, the next big city, so it's the second city in the UK, is Birmingham, where UB40, like the reggae band are from, who are famously more white than black, right? But they co-opted, like nowadays they would get a hard time because they'd be like, yeah, you're culturally appropriating our music. But it wasn't. They were real protest songs of the 1980s about really important things. And it's funny. It's funny you just mentioned, like, when we talked about Bob, because we are going to wrap up. So I'm going to wrap it up quickly. But I don't know if you know this, but do you know Bob Marley actually played one gig in Ireland that was really famous? Yeah, and I'm going to get you the football shirt because I know you like a bit of soccer, right? He played at a ground which is the football team. It's my team that I support in Dublin, the Bohemians, right? And what I'll do is I'll send you a picture on Facebook later. They made a football jersey with Bob. They've made a couple of them. One of them has got the fist, and then the other one, and it's all red, white, and red, gold, and green. But Bob played, and literally, like, the Bohemians have actually turned around and said, right, okay, Bob is our patron saint of our ground, right? But we didn't even scratch the surface on what I wanted to talk to you about. Like, talking to you about you is great, but your thoughts and your ideas, and like me and you were on the same. We're like, man, I just figured this out. I met you 13 years ago in Seattle in 2012, and we'll save how we met for the next episode, right? But I was going to say two things. First of all, Dwight, if you can free up the time, I'd like to do a bit more of this regularly because we always bounce off each other really well. And I know you got a load of stuff going on with the JKD Rebel, and the dialogues, but there's always room for more, right? So that would be great. I spoke to Will. Will's just literally messaged me to ask that, right? So that's one thing. And the other one is, bro, all I'd like to say is, first of all, for all the years of friendship and guidance, and which is the truth, because I do follow your lead. As I said, I'm going to part on this one. You, Dwight Woods, are one of the only people on the planet, apart from my dear wife, Annie, who could get me to back off when it comes to something on social media. And we won't go into details, but all I'll say is, if you say that you've killed 64 Iraqis in combat in Iraq using a BUG or whatever he said he did, and his wig didn't even move, and then he cried to you, and you said, Mick, is there any chance you could back off this guy who's really taking it harsh? And I backed off. Well, I backed off for a while, and then I jumped straight back in. I was like a Rottweiler, wasn't I? But yeah, I'd just like to say, Dwight, thank you so much. And if you want to give a quick plug out to the JKD Rebel and the dialogues, that'd be great. And man, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your time, Will. I appreciate it. Always, I really do. Thank you. Appreciate it. And remember, stay Irie, brother. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But believe it or not, my darling wife Annie's about to come in, but she's not. Look, she's hitting me on the head. See that? Do it again, Annie. Yeah. By the way, if you don't mind, can I just give a shout out to my wife? It was our 31st wedding anniversary yesterday, and on the way back from the restaurant, what did you say, Annie?
We won't make 32.
She says we won't make 32 because I was in a bad mood at the restaurant. So yeah, I don't believe that. But Dwight, do your shout out, brother, and then my wife's got some work for me to do, some errands.
Okay, yeah, and now my other phone's ringing. So on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern time, we do the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast, which is not as popular because that's just me talking to the camera, about a Jeet Kune Do topic. And then on Fridays at 6 p.m. as well is the Jeet Kune Do dialogues. You can find them. They have their own individual channels on the YouTube. And then I do the live stream from my page, Dwight D. Woods, on Facebook. And that's it.
Unmute myself again. So perfect. Thank you so much, Dwight. I'll see you soon.
Yes.
Will, look after yourself. Enjoy yourself down there by the seaside. And take care, right?
All right. Okay.
Peace and love always. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
If your brain is at full capacity with to-dos, birthdays, and dinner plans, meet Skylight Calendar. It syncs your entire family's schedule onto a sleek digital display, so you focus on important things like where you left your coffee. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/talk. Go to skylightcal.com/talk for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/talk.